This is a Bookpotato interview. Today I'm speaking with Carmen Powell. Carmen is a early years educator, would you say?
Educator, yes,
specialist, teacher,
teacher.
And you've also authored your first children's book.
My first book, yes, I'm very proud of that.
Matthew and the Magic Goat.
Yes.
First of all, let's talk about this, then we'll find out why and what made you do this particular book. Do you want to explain what the book is about?
Right, well, the book is an adventure story about a boy who loses his dog, and he goes back to the woods to find it.
Okay.
And then he comes across a goat who comes to his rescue, helping him out.
Okay, brilliant.
Yeah.
And why is the goat magic? What's magic about him? Because the whole story, obviously, you must read it to find out that it's slightly different, isn't it? It talks about, what would you say, issues? Or?
It does. I mean, it talks about, I mean, one of the reasons I wrote this particular adventure is because I'm a big fan of nature and children learning, being outdoors. Yeah. And it's about respecting nature. And animals are there. So obviously meeting a goat or meeting an animal would be obviously frightening to a child, of course. Yeah. But you also need to know what animals, give us back. And for instance, in this case, a goat gives us milk, for example. And a lot of children these days tend to drink cow's milk, but not necessarily goat's milk. So they learn that actually there's goat's milk available, which is really good for the digestive system. But also learn about nature, that nature is very helpful in a particular way. This obviously is a magical adventure, which is more appealing to children. Obviously goats are not magical. They're very cheeky animals, but they actually learn to be more adventurous outside. I put the little kid there because as a mum myself, I always used to tell my daughter that if ever she was lost, she needs to go and seek a parent that's got a baby to ask for help, because that will keep the child safe.
Yes, that's a very good point actually. That's perhaps not often included in the, it's always just go and find an adult, but...
No, I always used to say, please go and find an adult that's got a child, because I know then they'll be safe. It's much safer to go and approach someone like that who are going to be more willing to help and
Sure, that makes perfect sense.
Yes, rather than the stranger danger.
Yes, no, understood. So, how long ago did you bring Matthew and the Magic Goat out? And if anyone who's perhaps got an idea for a children's book they want to release, or any book, do you have any sort of tips of things you found was useful, that things that you wish you hadn't done, that sort of thing?
Well, I wrote this story as prose in the beginning, and I wrote it a few years back now. Right. I remember one Sunday morning just reading my usual books. I love anything about early years, but particularly about forest school, because I'm very much about outdoor learning. And I just wrote it quickly as I was reading. I just kind of stopped, went into my head, and just came up with this just adventure story quickly. And then I thought, so the boy's going to have a prosthetic leg as well after I finished writing it. That's what I did. And then I left it. I forgot all about it for years until I had a lull in my profession. And I thought, something, I need to just brush up that story. I still have that story kind of in one of my writing books. And I had to look at it again, and I felt I was tweeting it, and I did a good job at that, and I thought I'll present it to some publishers. And but then I was looking online, and I noticed one of the things that actually came to my attention. I put it through to Austin Macaulay. Let me just go back. I did apply. I did submit it to Austin Macaulay, because they're an online publisher, and I thought, okay, I'll try that first, because it looked quite easy. I had to look at the stages to go through, and I thought, okay, this looks easy, I can do this. And I did it, and I submitted it, and I forgot about it, but I kept looking. It was a summer, and I kept looking online to see what else you could do, and I came across a literary consultant.
Okay. And
for a small fee, they said they'd give you an honest opinion of any book that you would like to submit to publishers. And I thought, I'll have a go, I'll be brave. I know I've sent it to Mr. McCoy, but I'll be brave and see what they say. And they came back with a really good review, and they asked me to rhyme it.
Okay.
They said the one thing that we would suggest is for you to rhyme it because it'll be so much more important. Of course, as an earliest teacher, I should have known that really, because I know about rhyming and children pick up words much quicker when they're rhyming. So then, also my colleague got back to me saying, oh, they gave me a week when they're going to be discussing my book, and then I said, well, hold on, thank you very much, but could you hold back on that meeting because I've just sent it to this literary consultant and they said I need to rhyme it and I'm in the process of rhyming it, so can I present it again in a rhyming kind of form? And they agreed and waited, and then I rhymed it, which I found very hard, by the way, because I felt I had it just right in the prose, and then to rhyme it afterwards I found it tricky. Because it's having to think, oh, I don't want to change the idea, I don't want to change the storyline, you know, but you're having to change it to a little bit to kind of get the rhyming words going. It was, but anyway, I did it and I submitted it again, and within a week I got this contract in the post. I was chuffed with that, so it was worth it.
So it actually happened quite quick after you submitted it, you know, it took a while to...
July it was when I submitted it first to Austin Macaulay, and then I sent it to within 10 days or 2 weeks, sent it to the literary consultant. They came back within 24 hours with it, because it was a big book to read. And then I adjusted it and sorted it out, and 2nd of September, I remember distinctly, was the day I got my contract in the post.
Wow.
That was that quick turnaround, yes.
Yeah, that's very quick. I suppose, I mean, how long's a piece of string, it's hard to say, but what made this particularly successful in terms of getting accepted versus other people's that they may go around 10 different publishing houses and they're not getting such a quick thing? What was so special about this, would you say, from your point of view, of course?
It's basically Matthew. It's Matthew who's got a prosthetic leg.
Right.
That's what it is. And even the literary consultant, the first thing she said to me, this is going to be a book that's going to be loved by all educators and librarians. She said, because it's an adventure story about a child, it's about inclusion, and it's not about the disability, it's about an adventure, and the children will discover this and talk about it in a comfortable environment when they're ready to do so, rather than being talked about specifically. So the book is not about the disability, which is wonderful. And obviously I've been reading to children earlier on, and children did notice the prosthetic leg, and I had one child saying to me, oh look, it's got a stick for a leg, and the other one said it's got metal on the leg, and it was in this picture, and this is where they see it, because obviously the child is still quite tall there, because he's magically grown taller, and of course then they can see that, which is a very important image. So the littlest ones may not see it and they'll accept it for what it is, but slightly older children will look at this and question it, and this is wonderful, because this is a nice way to open that nice discussion in a safe environment to talk about not everyone's the same, and these children are able to use this prosthetic leg to be able to go about their business and still have adventures and be normal like everyone else, and not necessarily bound to a wheelchair, which is absolutely lovely. So this is wonderful, and this is one of the things that I feel has sold it to the publisher, because the literary consultant said to me, this is going to be loved by everybody.
Because there's so few books that have this, but just as in the story perhaps, they're being a bit more, would you say, clumsy in terms of they're trying to integrate that, but they're making a big thing about it and explaining why the child or the adult has a prosthetic leg, and you're not doing that. It's just, he has a prosthetic leg, because people do, but it doesn't interact or affect.
No, we don't talk about it at all. It just so happens the child is going on an adventure, same as any other child. It so happens he has a prosthetic leg, and it's for the children to take it on board as normal, because that's what children do. So it shows disability in a very positive way, and that children with some sort of disability still have incredible adventures and wonderful things to experience. So it's a really lovely positive.
No, I think that's such a brilliant idea.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and hence why it would be great if this is known about more throughout schools, librarians, that sort of thing.
That's the idea, is to get more educators to actually know about the book and to be able to share it with children in classrooms and things and talk about it more, because it's so important.
Have you had much feedback from organisations, from schools, from people wanting to use this as I suppose, a bit of a sort of, would you say, a classroom tool or an aid to talking about this sort of thing?
Yes, I have had quite a lot of positive feedback from friends of mine who are also colleagues who teach in schools, who have used the book, even in the States, in America, because I worked in international schools and some of my friends have moved back to America and they said they've used the book in the classroom and they had some incredible conversations. I've got friends who are also childminders and they've used the book and they said they found it really wonderful to have the opportunity to discuss these things in a kind of very open way. It was really wonderful to talk about disability in that way. I personally have not had that much opportunity to go around schools because I've been busy working in London, and it was published only last February, end of February, and then there was Book Week in March, and one of my colleagues who I used to work in the same school with, she asked me to go to her setting, to her school. She's got an earlier setting there, and to read to the children. So during Book Week I did go. Again, it was North London. I seem to gravitate to North London quite a lot, and read to different age groups, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, and 4 to 5, and it was a really wonderful experience. And I have had the littlest ones not really say very much about that, but they could talk about other details in the book, like for instance, they like the flowers. I remember the day that I went, it was quite dark in March because it was going to rain, and when it was getting dark in the story, one of the little ones was saying to me, "It's dark outside now." So making the comparisons, there was great linking there going on. It was lovely, and also talking about animals. The older ones did talk about the prosthetic leg, and that was lovely. And I happen to have a prosthetic leg, which has been donated kindly by a family I know. Whose child does have a prosthetic leg, and they've grown out of this one, and they offered it to me to be able to tour with it in schools. So my aim is to go to schools and libraries and read more, and obviously hopefully get the opportunity to discuss it more, like I did today.
No, that's brilliant, and yes, you've kindly done a series of book readings in the shop today with children of all ages.
Yes.
Again, from people perhaps watching this who want to get their work published, if you could go back and, with the benefit of hindsight and do it all again, what would you not do in terms of, obviously because your whole process has been extremely successful and you've got kind of where you want to be relatively quickly, but is there anything that you thought, I wish I could have done that differently? Or
I think I should have had more confidence in my story, not left it to simmer there for about 3 years and not done anything about it. I think I should have done more sooner to start with, and maybe I should have, I do think it's my fault, that I should have known better and I should have rhymed it. I should have known to rhyme it. I don't know why it didn't come to mind, and it was the literary consultant who made me think about that. I should have known that rhyming is the best way forward for children. But my second book, I thought of it in rhyme, so it was much easier to write.
So you've got in that groove.
So now I know that rhyming is the way forward.
Well, it's interesting that you say about the confidence of the book and of your writing, because what you've managed to do is confirmation of the fact that you had such a good idea in the first place, with the ease, and I mean, nothing's easy, but compared to some other people perhaps, the fact that it did get accepted so quickly, that but you were still unsure whether it would be the confidence, and confidence makes a huge difference, doesn't it, in terms of both creating something, and I guess going out promoting it. You do find some authors, even who've got to where you are, who've got their work published, they're not promoting it quite as hard as perhaps they should, or they feel that they don't want to, or not quite comfortable with going out there talking about their own book. They almost kind of want someone else to do it for them because they're a bit embarrassed or whatever the case may be. But confidence does make all the difference, doesn't it?
It does, you're right. But I am confident to go out there and read to children, because one of the things I've always done as a teacher in the classrooms I've worked in, I've always used books for children to get language acquisition. I've worked in international schools, and a lot of the time the children that come to the classroom don't have any English. They have English as an additional language, they don't speak English straight away, so it's just acquiring that language, and I found using books for the children to pick up the language was so lovely. Obviously nursery rhymes, but books in particular. And you start slowly and build up the language that way, and it's been really wonderful to do that. So I've always used books in many ways.
Sure.
And illustrations in these books for young children are extremely important, because you have to remember, even in art, tapestries a long time ago were used by lots of monarchs, just hanging them outside their castles, to be able to have the locals actually decode them and know the moral messages of these rulers at the time, because a lot of them were illiterate.
Of course.
And I work with children who don't know how to read and write yet. So for me, illustrations are as important as the words, the rhyming words in here. So the children can actually go through a story, a book, go through it page by page, and actually try and decode the story from the illustrations as well, which I think is really, really important, yes. And also identify detail, which I love. For instance, the daffodils. I insisted with illustrations put daffodils because it was springtime with the little kid. So to put bluebells and daffodils and daisies around, just so children can identify with the season that you've got.
Yes, that's very important.
The goat and the kid. That it is springtime, and that they can identify with these and relate to them from their own experiences, which is really important. Little detail like that. And also this sort of thing stimulates the imagination, which helps children be able to write a lot more when they're older. When they start writing themselves little stories, they will be able to, look at detail and write about detail, which I think is very important. Yes.
Because just before we started filming, we were talking about your experience as a teacher with children and how books are so important with education, language, teaching young children to speak. What is happening now in terms of school? What's good about happening now? What, in your opinion, could be done better in relation to reading, the encouragement of reading, books, education, both from young children, but I guess up to sort of leaving school age as well?
I mean, with early years and young children, generally the idea is to try and tune into children's interest. And by doing that, you select books that are going to appeal to the children. So for instance, children love animals and love adventure stories, so you're always going to seek things like that for the children. And they love colours, and one of the things, for instance, that I used to prep my books. I put a rainbow tree there because I know at the end they are still going to be excited by the colours they'll see at the end, and they'll be telling me, and I don't even have to ask half the time with the children up there, so they're all telling me the colours and telling me which was their favourite colour.
Oh, brilliant.
Which I think is wonderful, because you're still keeping them engaged right till the end. So there isn't an anticlimax at the end. There's something that's wonderful to lift them up. And there are lots of books like that, like The Blue Balloon, for example, is another book like that. I like The Selfish Crocodile. There are lots of wonderful books. The Night After the Storm, I think it was another one where the tree is a very big double page of a tree, which is lovely, and it becomes a tree house. So the children can engage in more into things that interest them. So it's appealing to the children's interest through books, knowing what the children like. If they like animals, they will listen and they'll get engaged. Whatever it is, they'll get engaged. And it's the same throughout their ages as they get older. There are some wonderful books that children can hopefully hook into as they get older, like the Harry Potter books are really good. When my daughter was young, she also used to read Tracy Beaker.
Okay,
That was very popular at the time. It's something that was very contemporary in the noughties, and she used to watch Tracy Beaker on the BBC, and then we supported that with the books. So you support the children's interest with books, and then she was reading the books because she wanted to read more about Tracy Beaker and all the other stories. And these are the ways, some of the ways that you can appeal to children to get them to love stories and to love books, because they're building their concentration. And as we discussed earlier, when they go to further education like universities, they really need to have the ability to be able to have the patience and concentration to read through books and to
Mm.
analyze them. And when children, the little ones, like to listen to books over and over again, the same books.
Yeah, yeah.
And sometimes adults think, how many times am I going to read the same story? But for children, it's so important they do listen to the same story, because for them, they're making sense of the plot line, and also the characterizations, how they're the characters, how they're building the characters, which I think is really wonderful. So that's why it's important to keep repeating, rereading books.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, there are a number of books I've read zillions of times in the classrooms, and each year I had different books that were popular by a group of children, which was very interesting as well.
That is interesting. I think for everyone though, for adults as well, it's I always think of the quote that I can't remember where I heard it, but the idea of if you're reading a book the second, the third, the 10th time, you know, as an adult, that you're never the same person reading that book. You know, you read it a year ago. Well, you've had a year of extra experiences you hadn't had before, so you read it again, you go, oh, okay, I didn't perhaps understand it then, but now I do.
Yes.
Or now I'm ready for that message. You know,
you're right, because you're bringing to the story new experiences that you can relate to what you're reading, and that's wonderful.
Heartache, breakup, whatever, new job, being fired, whatever,
Yes, I agree with you, so that's true, very true.
You can't just read a book once and think, well, that's done, because, you know, depending on what the book is and what it's about, but even non-fiction books, I think you could read from a different mindset.
You're right.
Years apart.
It's a very good point you're making. It is true, because I revisit a lot of books, and you read them with a different kind of perspective, don't you? Then, because you know you've had those different experiences. That you're bringing to the book.
Sure. You know, even if they could be 10 years apart, and you could have done a completely different career, and now you go, oh,
you look at it in a different light. Then.
Different light completely.
That's true. Very true. Yes.
Carmen, thank you very much for your time today. You've been with us for a while reading, and if people want to contact you, if they like what you're saying about your book, about your message, about finding out more, is there a way for people to contact you? What's the best way?
Yes, they can. I mean, I'm on Facebook as Carmen Powell. I also have a website through the publishers, which is my own, and I tend to they update it for me with all the current things that I'm doing.
We'll put the link on.
For instance, recently I met Michael Rosen, and little things like that I added on there, and hopefully I can add on the experience I had today with Potato Book. That's lovely, Bookpotato. So yes, it'd be lovely.
Thank you very much, and we'll include all your links on the video. Carmen, thank you very much for your time.
No, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
No problem.